It was always the same. Midnight shift, working alone in the vast, echoing silence of Warehouse 7. My job was straightforward. Restock the A section, verify inventory, lock up. Tonight, it was just me, the distant drone of refrigeration units, and the rhythmic clatter of my own footsteps against the concrete. I was pulling stock from the top shelf, a routine task I'd done hundreds of times, box after box of identical components. I lowered a pallet, scanned the new batch, and maneuvered it into place with the pallet jack. As I turned to grab the next one, I noticed something. A single, small, unmarked cardboard box resting on the very top of the newly stocked pallet, directly in the center. It hadn't been there a moment ago. I knew this because I had just placed those boxes myself. I frowned, thinking maybe the last shift left something. But it was pristine, no dust, no labels. I reached up, pulled it down. It was lighter than air, completely empty. I set it on a nearby shelf, dismissing it as a prank or a mistake, and went back to work, a faint unease settling in. A few hours later, deep in another aisle, meticulously arranging product, I turned to grab a hand truck, and there it was again. Another identical, small, empty cardboard box, sitting neatly on top of the stack I was about to move. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't a coincidence. No one else was in the warehouse. I distinctly remembered this stack being empty moments before. I picked it up. Still empty. A chill, colder than the warehouse air, ran down my spine. I walked over to a security camera, thinking I'd check the footage later, hoping to catch some anomaly. As I looked up at the lens, I saw it. Tucked neatly on top of the camera housing, barely visible in the dim light, was a third empty box. It was facing me. I didn't open that last box. I just stared at it, a cold dread washing over me, knowing someone, or something, was watching me, deliberately leaving these silent, empty messages. And it knew exactly where I'd be looking. The graveyard shift in receiving was notorious for being short-staffed. So when my supervisor told me a new guy, Mark, was starting, I was relieved. He just said, "He'll be here tonight. Just keep an eye out." I arrived at 10 p.m. The dock was busy, trucks coming and going. I started unloading a trailer, scanning pallets. After about an hour, I heard the distinct squeal of a hand truck coming from the far end of the dock. Then a series of heavy thuds, like boxes being dropped. Must be Mark, I thought. I waved in that general direction, but no one responded. Later, I was pulling product from a high rack. I heard a low whistle, a simple, tuneless melody, just behind me. I spun around. Nothing. The aisle was empty. "Hey, Mark!" I called out, my voice swallowed by the vastness of the warehouse. No answer. I shrugged it off, attributing it to fatigue. But it kept happening. A strong scent of Old Spice cologne would waft past me in an empty aisle. The distinct sound of a distant cough, always from just around a corner I was about to turn. One time I walked into the break room, and a half-empty coffee mug was still steaming on the table. No one else was there. I asked another coworker, "Has Mark been in?" He just looked at me blankly. "Who's Mark?" The final straw came around 4 a.m. I was in the cold storage section, stacking frozen goods. It was bone-chillingly cold, and my breath plumed like smoke. I heard a soft, scraping sound, like someone dragging a heavy box across the concrete floor, coming from the next aisle over. I peered around the corner, expecting to see Mark. Instead, I saw a pallet jack, loaded with 3 large, unlabeled boxes, slowly, almost imperceptibly, moving itself down the aisle. No one was pushing it. It was completely empty on my side, and the next aisle was empty too. I froze, watching it for a long moment. Then, from the direction it had come from, I heard that low, tuneless whistle, clear as day. It wasn't the sound of an actual person whistling. It sounded hollow, like it was coming from inside my own head, or from somewhere just beyond. I didn't finish my shift. I just walked out, the whistle echoing in my ears, knowing Mark wasn't just a new hire. The old conveyor belt system in Sector 9 was always temperamental. It would jam, squeal, and sometimes just stop mid-run. But what happened last month was different. I was on the night shift, alone, tasked with clearing a backlog of returns on that specific line. Around 2 a.m. I noticed it. A low, rhythmic thumping sound coming from deep within the conveyor's framework, beneath the belt itself. It sounded like something was trapped, repeatedly hitting the metal. I stopped the line and went to investigate, shining my flashlight into the darkness below. Nothing, just dust, grease, and the usual maze of rollers and gears. I restarted the belt. The thumping returned. It grew steadily louder over the next few hours, morphing into something more distinct. Not just thumping, but a kind of muffled, dragging scrape, like something heavy being pulled. It also developed a new, chilling characteristic. It would pause for a few seconds, then resume. Almost like it was breathing. I called maintenance, but they couldn't find anything wrong. "Just the old system acting up," they said over the phone. But it wasn't just acting up. Around 4 a.m., as I was loading a pallet, the conveyor belt, which was supposed to be running forward, suddenly lurched, reversed for a few feet, then stopped with a shudder. And then from deep inside its gut, I heard it. A soft, distinct whisper. It sounded like a child's voice, muffled and distorted, but clear enough to make out 2 words. "Help me." My blood ran cold. I immediately turned off the power to the entire section, plunging the conveyor into silence. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, from the now silent machinery, I heard it again, clearer this time, echoing from the darkened tunnel of the belt. "He's coming." I didn't wait for him. I ran out of that warehouse faster than I ever have, leaving the whispering conveyor belt behind, still vibrating with that unseen, unheard terror. My job was to conduct a full inventory audit, even the dead zones parts of the warehouse that hadn't seen activity in years. The furthest corner of Warehouse 4 was one such place. It was a graveyard of forgotten stock, covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs, smelling faintly of mildew and decay. As I navigated through the labyrinth of empty pallet spaces and rusting shelves, I found a small alcove, almost entirely blocked by fallen boxes. Behind them, stacked neatly, were 3 old wooden crates. They looked like they'd been there since the building was first constructed. No labels, just dark, aged wood. I tried to move the top crate to scan it, but it was surprisingly heavy. I dragged it out into the faint light, brushed off the dust. What I saw next made my blood run cold. Scratched crudely into the wood on the side of the crate was a single, unmistakable image. A stick figure, arms outstretched, with a large, frantic X over its head. It wasn't just scratched. It looked like it had been gouged out with a key or a nail, deep and desperate. I scoffed at myself, trying to rationalize it as old graffiti. But as I moved to the second crate, I found the same crude drawing, the same X, in the exact same spot. And then the third. 3 identical crates, 3 identical desperate warnings. I started to feel an oppressive dread. This wasn't just graffiti. This was intentional. I decided to ignore them, focusing on the rest of the audit. But as I was leaving that section, I noticed something else. On the wall, just above where the crates had been stacked, also scratched into the concrete, was the same stick figure, with the same X over its head. And directly beneath it, a date. October 17th, 1987. I looked down at my watch. It was October 17th. And as I turned to leave the alcove, I felt a faint, cold breath on the back of my neck. I froze. Then, from behind me, from the direction of the crates, I heard a soft, distinct click. It sounded like a lock engaging. I didn't look back. I just ran, leaving the crates, and whatever was in them, locked away in that forgotten corner, knowing I had just disturbed something that wanted to stay buried.